everybody, and welcome to EntrepreNINES. I'm John Wist.
And I'm Bonni Mace, and we are two Enneagram 9s who took the big leap into the world of entrepreneurship at a similar time. And this podcast is a space where we're inviting you to laugh and learn with us as we work to create businesses with soul. This is episode 48.
48.
What are we doing today, John?
Today, we are having an interview.
Yay!
With our friend Jason Raitz of Speak with People. And this was really fun. I feel like it was a fun interview. I know Jason through some mutual friends who are also now business partners with Jason. Yeah. And so I was actually at the very first conference that his company put on. And we happened to be sitting around talking one night and found out he is an Enneagram type 4. And that was kind of like a shock in some ways and really interesting.
For your experience.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. And so we just did our deep dive on 4s and we thought he would be a great person to have on to come talk about his business and just how his type 4-ness integrates with Speak with People. It's just a fun conversation.
Yeah, it did not disappoint. So
No, yeah.
Listen in.
Here we go.
Hey everybody, today we're welcoming Jason Raitz. Did I say that right, Jason? Yeah.
You sure did.
From Speak with the People. And I'm not going to do any sort of more introduction right now because that's what we're going to ask you about. So go ahead and kick us off if you don't mind. Tell us a little about yourself and about Speak with People.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Love being here and love your show. My wife and I have been married for almost 27 years with 5 kids. So life has been very full.
Yeah.
Our oldest is graduated from college, and then we have a 21, almost 20, 16, and 10-year-old. We adopted our 10-year-old from China 7 years ago. So we're really passionate about the rare disease community. 3 of our youngest have a rare genetic disease called phenylketonuria, or PKU. And so basically they can't eat protein, so everything is weighed and measured, and they have a medical formula, and we do blood tests.
Wow.
And then obviously we're real passionate about the adoption community
because
our youngest was adopted, and we have 2 kids with autism. And so we've learned, a whole lot about communicating through them. So I was a pastor for 26 years. Left and started this company called Speak with People. And so at the heart of it, we empower leaders to become healthy and influential communicators. So whether they communicate one-on-one, sitting across from somebody, we call that Speak with People. Whether they communicate to a team, we call that Lead with People. Whether they communicate from a stage, we call that Present with People. Or like we are right now, online with people. So we want to help leaders be a well-rounded, holistically healthy communicator, because when they are, their influence increases. So I travel and speak in companies. We offer courses for leaders to become more effective and more healthy communicators. And then I do some coaching for some leaders. So it's a riot. I work at home now after 26 years of always working in an office.
Yeah.
And we live in Tampa, Florida. So there's a pool in the backyard.
Nice.
And it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, Jason, thanks for coming on. We met through a mutual friend who is now also part of the Speak with People team. So
yes,
it's awesome to have gotten to know you a little bit. And I thank you for having me come down to your first conference because it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. And I think I got to learn a lot about you during that week. Obviously, it was a very busy week, but I got to learn quite a bit about you. And I think what's interesting is the 3 of us come from very similar backgrounds in the sense that we were all in the ministry life and have transitioned into entrepreneurial life. And so talk to me just a little bit about your journey, from ministry into entrepreneurship, the catalyst, what brought you to that point, and just kind of how you've seen that transition, kind of impact both past and present.
Ooh, wow. Big question.
Yeah.
We'll see if we have time.
Yeah.
Life story, 10 minutes. Go. I'm just kidding.
Yes, go. Well, I had been sensing for a bunch of years that our time in ministry was coming to a conclusion. And I don't know if it's the 4 in me. I don't know if it was the crazy up and down and pastoring a church. So my wife and I planted a church in central Michigan. Because we're from Michigan, we do this. And that's where we planted the church. I grew up here in Detroit, and then we planted a church here
Nice.
in a town called Mount Pleasant, which is literally the middle of the Mitten State.
Okay.
So that's what it is.
Nice.
So we pastored it for 8 years, and it was a very good experience. We loved raising our kids there. Our kids were really involved in the church. Our church was in a movie theater. It was a setup, tear down, lots of work, all that kind of stuff. Lots of up and downs. We planted in a very economically challenged area. Average median income was $28,000. We wanted to reach people who had given up on God, given up on church. And so we did. We really did.
Yeah.
And it was difficult. We had people coming through our doors who had just, lives were falling apart. And so I don't know if it's the 4 in me. I don't know if it's, stuff that I've worked through with my counselor for years, but the church hurt took its toll. And we eventually moved to Tampa to be an executive pastor. I transitioned my church to our executive pastor, which was awesome.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than a really healthy succession with somebody that you've raised up. He grew up in the area. I really never fit in central Michigan. I grew up in the city of Detroit. We lived outside of Chicago. And I begged God to let me plant in Tampa. Always wanted to plant in Clearwater, Florida, and had interviewed at churches in California, Texas, and Florida throughout the years. But my wife just never had a strong piece about moving. And so she would have gone, but I wanted us to both be 100%.
Yeah.
And about halfway through COVID, my wife just said one day, I have a piece about going warm. I have a bad back, and so I've always wanted to live somewhere warm. The snow, I just have such I don't, there's nothing more that I dislike than snow and ice and such. So we now live where,
there's none
it
of
was like
that.
a sauna walking outside.
Yeah.
And we complain when it's 52 in January. So
Yeah.
So we transitioned our church. A pastor that I had known for 20 years asked me to be a executive pastor outside of Tampa, Florida. And I thought, okay, like the pressure of leading the church, the financial pressure, the making the salaries, the raising money for the building campaign, all that stuff. Okay, now I can concentrate on discipleship and systems. And to be really crazy honest, I knew the night before I officially started that it wasn't going to work out. I knew that I had kind of come into a situation that I was just not equipped to handle. And after 15 months, I resigned. I was the 5th executive pastor in 5 years. 4 had been fired.
Wow.
I quit, and I was about the 70th staff member in 5 years to be fired, pushed out, transitioned.
Wow.
I had conversations with the pastor for a few months leading up to it. And, I wasn't the perfect employee and was trying to learn and grow, but I was just not equipped for what they needed. And at that point, I had a bunch of disgruntled folks from area churches that were like, you should plant a church. And in my pride, I was like, yeah, I should plant a church. We've done that before. I always wanted to plant in Tampa.
Yeah.
And I sat down with my wife and I said, we should plant a church. And she was about a negative 90%.
Yeah.
So, yes. So it had taken a toll on my whole family. Even my kids were, because we've always involved our kids in some of our family decisions.
Yeah.
Most of our family decisions. And they were like, no, I don't think so. And so we were trying to figure out what to do. My whole identity was just a wreck at that point. Because for 26 years, I worked as a pastor, youth pastor, small groups pastor, executive pastor, lead pastor, church planner. And so now I'm like, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
Had a couple of kind of conversations with churches, with different, but we didn't want to move. We loved Tampa and worked our whole life to get here. And so this idea of starting Speak With People came because of our mutual friend, Dennis.
Yeah.
He and I were on a phone call one Saturday morning. Dennis on the side races cars. And so he was on a racetrack and I was saying, hey, I think I might launch out as a speaker. And Dennis and I started casting vision of what it could look like. And Dennis was like, hey, I think we got something here. And, in the beginning, I had spoken churches for, 25 years. I thought, okay, I'll just be a church speaker.
Yeah.
And as I started walking down that road, it could be just all made up. Because I feel like when we go through tough seasons sometimes, a good amount of the negative voices is just made up voices that we're doing to ourselves.
Yeah.
But I felt like a lot of the voices were saying, nobody wants you in the church world. You've tried that for 26 years. Even, the people you used to work with aren't really even interested in what you're doing now. And so why even attempt anything? So, I was battling all of that. I was trying to overcome the extreme burnout of, the previous, planting a church, going through COVID, transitioning your family, going to an environment that was 180 different. And then all of the church staff firings, just trying to figure out how to help people through that, and myself, and figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
So it was rough.
Yeah.
It was fall of 22 was very low, very dark. But this idea for Speak with People just kind of kept coming to mind. And years earlier, 2018, 19, I had started some online cohorts with business leaders and pastors to help them improve their communication skills. And so it's so funny, even well before COVID, I'm doing, online cohorts over Zoom with different folks. And I thought, okay, maybe that's it. And so we started, trying to do that, see if we get people in cohorts.
Yeah.
And that didn't really take off. And then, so eventually it's just the craziest thing, because of one person and one referral. He sat down with me, and he works for a Fortune 500 company. And he said, hey, I work for this company. We provide annuities to banks and financial institutions. What if you create a training on healthy communication skills that will help licensed bankers and financial advisors and bank tellers and executive managers improve their one-on-one communication skills with their clients? And I was like, yeah, I love that. I mean, for 26 years, I was a pastor. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We talk to people.
Yeah.
So we started, and then that turned into there's a bank down here in the Tampa area. I've done virtual trainings for every single branch in Tampa, Sarasota, Fort Myers, Venice, Tennessee. We're working on other parts of the state of Florida. And then that turned into working with Truist Wealth, and then Flagstar Bank and Huntington Bank and PNC. And so now this same company has bought our content, and they're co-branding it, and they're going to roll it out to all of their regional vice presidents, who can then roll it out to different banks. So it's just wild.
Yeah.
Like we just kind of kept taking steps, and I find myself, I'm not super involved in the church world per se anymore. I still coach anywhere from 3 to 6 pastors through a program I have called Preach with People.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of pastors preach at people. They just dump information and hope it sticks. I want to be deep, so I give lots of information instead of providing the life-changing stuff where people can really grab hold of what God's calling.
Yeah.
And so still do that a little bit. Every once in a while, I'll preach in a church. I have one summer camp this summer, which could be my last one because I am an older guy. I'll be 49 soon. But for the most part, I now do a lot of corporate speaking, training, coaching in that avenue. We have a podcast for our company, Speak with People podcast. We have a blog, Speak with People blog. And we hope to provide resources to leaders to help them improve their communication skills. Because really, I think through the research I've read, through the interviews I've done with leaders, it's really the major area that's holding leaders back from truly succeeding in their careers, and from kind of experiencing what they hope with promotions, with earning more money, with more responsibility. It's those communication skills. So it's just been this wild journey. I'm working on our first book, Speak with People, Not at Them.
Cool.
Hope it's going to be out this fall.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then we'll start working on the next book, which will be Lead with People, Not at Them, and we'll kind of keep going on. But yeah, that's kind of what's brought me to this place. And John, loved working with you in the conference. We hope to do it next March.
Nice.
So the Speakers Conference 2.0.
Nice.
And really, it's been more refined because now our target audience really is that professional business leader who's a sales executive or a financial advisor or works in an office, and they're looking for how to improve their everyday communication, how to stand up and present presentations so people respond. And so we're going to look at all those communication skills. So March of 25, I'll make sure I get that on your calendar.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm there. So
Florida in March, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
If you need
in
an
March.
Enneagram coach, just let me know.
I'm telling you, right? That's why I'm like, our location was literally on the Gulf.
Yeah.
So you woke up, grabbed coffee, walked out to the sand.
Oh,
and there was the golf.
I saw
was
pictures.
beautiful.
I saw pictures.
Yeah.
I felt jealous.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It was great.
That's awesome.
It was great. So, I mean, I feel like this, especially because we did a deep dive on type 4s in our previous episode, I feel like it's a good time to kind of transition into talking about the impact, your knowledge of the Enneagram and your knowledge of your type as a 4 and the impact that that's had on this journey. Because I feel like, from where I sit, I think you must be a very healthy person, because it feels to me like you have been very effective and efficient. It feels like with Speak With People in particular, and that it's grown really and I have a little more inside knowledge. Like, I feel like you guys have grown very quickly. You've put a lot of programs and a lot of things into place very, very quickly, which is really awesome to see. And so I think, knowing what we talked about in the last episode from our deep dive, where there's kind of an inherent inside you, or can be for 4s, there's an inherent kind of, questioning and doubting of self. And I'll let you talk about that a little bit more, Bonni, but I feel like, that has had to have been a struggle through this. And I think we heard a little bit of that.
You definitely alluded to it.
Yeah. But especially with this whole new chapter, something completely different than what your previous background was, tell me a little bit about the doubt, the inner turmoil, I guess, that you've experienced through this process.
Yeah. Well, even outside of that, I should have said, I led Speak With People the first year like a nonprofit, because I had led nonprofits for 26 years. So, I have amazing partners with Dennis and Caitlin Neal, and, together we've been able to kind of, piece some things together. And I worked over the years at some pretty large mega churches, Willow Creek in Chicago. I worked at Northridge in Plymouth, Michigan. And so I kind of was used to a culture that just went fast. And then when I planted a church in Mount Pleasant, I planted in an area that was primarily rural. And rural areas don't go fast.
They do not.
They just don't. And so I planted Thrive like I was still working at Willow Creek. Okay, we got to hit this next strategic goal and we've got to move on. And I'm like, okay. So when I started Speak With People, I was leading it like a church in the beginning. And where my unhealthy 4-ness came in was when I had to go through the process of realizing not everybody cares about Speak With People. Not everybody's going to like every post. Not everybody's going to buy our products. Not everybody's going to listen to the podcast. And there has been a lot of crying and moaning and complaining and, just a deep lows because, I want to experience that rapid growth. And you listen to the Donald Miller podcast and you listen to the Gary Vee's and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, I got to get there tomorrow. Like, why aren't, how come, our course only sold this, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult.
Yeah.
So on a couple ends, one, from being a vocational pastor for 26 years, kind of moving away from that. A lot of people still see me as a pastor. They still treat me as a pastor. I get probably every week 8 to 10 Facebook messages from people asking me to pray for them, asking for, they just need to talk. And they're like, I feel like you're still my pastor. So in some ends, I think Speak With People is a kingdom business, even though we're an S Corp, where, our primary focus is not for Christian leaders. Our primary focus is for leaders, business leaders in the workplace. We want to reach them, and then we want to provide resources then for them to improve. And then I find myself, I'm in Nashville last fall, having drinks after this training. Everybody's kind of hanging out. And then all of a sudden this guy just starts talking to me. And he's like, oh, you just seem so easy to talk to. And then I end up hearing all about his struggles with his wife and this and that. And I'm like, okay, I'm still in ministry. This is, I'm more of the missionary in the marketplace now.
Yeah.
So some of the, the core fears of a 4, of being inadequate, being emotionally cut off, just being plain, and then especially with all the FOMO of this person's blowing up on social media. How come I only have 5,500 Facebook friends and not 6,000?
Yeah.
All of those things just there's been at least a half a dozen times where I was ready to throw in the towel. Close, very close of like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then in the fall, I've had a couple churches approach me. Actually, 2 months ago, I had a church approach me, campus pastor role. They have 8 campuses. Their broadcast campus has about 4,000 people. And they're like, hey, we need a campus pastor. And your name just kind of keeps coming up. And for the first time, probably in my life, I've always dealt with contentment issues. I don't know how much of that, of my 4-ness that is. I don't know.
That's a lot.
I have a family member who thinks I'm a 3. I always test as a 4, wing 3, but they think I'm a pure 3. I think in my 20s, my early 30s, I was a pure 3, achiever, success, go. And then I experienced this massive failure. I was leading a nonprofit, and we hosted this big giant music festival, and it just bombed financially. And so massive failure. I was kind of the youth pastor in the Detroit area. I was leading youth pastor gatherings. And then now I was the butt of jokes, like,
oh man,
failed, like, and I think after that, I kind of I saw the change happening. And so, us 4s, we want to be unique, special. We always want to be our authentic self. I was thinking about it the other day about how now that I'm an entrepreneur, I've always loved to work. I've always brought work home. I was, always all of that. Now it's a whole different crazy because we have a studio. My office is in my garage in a room that's built in there for an office. Like I don't ever have to stop working.
Yeah.
And I love it. But then on the other hand, if I don't rest, I can't create. And most of what I do is create.
Yeah.
I create, different talks for programs and coaching material. And like even this morning, I'm on a walk and I'm listening to one of my pastor clients, one of their messages, so I can give critique. When I'm creating all day, I'm, my face is in the screen and I'm trying to come up with material, by 4 o'clock, I am done.
Yeah.
I'm just toast. And so I've had to learn how to get to that place as a healthy 4 to kind of, Vanessa Van Edwards calls them the gremlins, those voices. Believers, obviously we know it's, Satan and his lies, but those voices of like, why are you working on this new material? It's not going to work. Why even, attempt this? Why even do that? And so I've had to do a lot of work. I was blessed because in our area, there's actually a ministry called Blessings Ranch Ministries that specialize in PTSD for ministry leaders.
Wow.
Okay.
And so they do week-long intensives. And I was blessed because I know the director of it, Dr. Charity Byers. We had her on the podcast in the very beginning, an amazing episode. And so she was my counselor and kind of helped me walk through, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think without the counseling, I think without a core group of people who were in my corner, like I talked about Dennis and Caitlin, they have walked with me through tons of stuff. I've got people here in Tampa who helped me start the podcast. I've got a 20-year-old son who, works for Speak with People, produces all of our material, without the community and 4s, right? I'm always trying to rally people, trying to get people involved. And so I've had to learn in a very difficult way. Not everybody's going to want to be a part, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also feel like, and you referenced it just now, but I saw your post about like your constant creativity, but then also like, I feel like you're pushing yourself to try some outlets that like stand-up comedy, that, like to me, this is from a maybe a 9's perspective looking at a 4, right? Like to me that you're doing things to not just keep creating, but create in new and different ways that kind of help maybe that, uniqueness, help that, scratch that itch a little bit, maybe of, this is something I really want to try. Why wouldn't I do it? Kind of a thing. Yep. And it keeps it fresh. It keeps it new, versus, the constant creativity all day long, on the same thing. So
yeah.
Does that hit? Like, does that feel like that is like kind of something that maybe as a healthy exercise, like you're trying to constantly expand kind of the outlets you have?
Oh, for sure. And I think part of my 3, and maybe I'm a different nut because I have 5 kids. You know,
that'll do it to you.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 kids. Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. I've had to be very careful over the years because I have friends without kids or friends with 1 or 2. And I'm like, oh, you know, must be nice to only have, 2. And that's unfair. Although those that's unfair. But I've had to learn, especially with some of my achiever mentality, hey, my number 1 goal in life is for my wife and kids to still love me. And so I don't want to ruin all of that because I'm off trying to be the greatest, this and this and this and this and this. And so doing some things like, yes, the stand-up comedy, yeah, they definitely do scratch the itch. I love to be on stage, and I've always wanted to try to figure out, I'm a storyteller. I use humor a lot. I still do to some extent, speak in public schools. And the only way that I'm able to grab attention in a public school is through stories. I'm not riding a skateboard. I'm not juggling fire. I'm not, I've got nothing. I'm a 48-year-old guy who's coming in with stories that captivate. And when you tell a story about your best friend's mom vacuuming up their pet bird,
Ooh,
I mean, you got it.
Yeah.
People of all ages. I tell that to financial advisors. I tell that to, children, The story is just, so I use humor to build trust with people. It breaks down walls. So yeah, I love that. So trying to, figure out some of that rhythm, and also trying to figure out where my community is now. I've struggled with, not that I'm deconstructing my faith at all. I'm not kind of in that camp. One of my best friends has a podcast all about deconstructing their faith. I went on his podcast and talked about kind of some of the church deconstruction thoughts I'm having, just because I worked for church forever. I saw the machine that it became. When I worked at Willow, I could have never left my office. I never had to be with people. I just needed to make sure I recruited enough people. The attendance numbers were going the right way, and that was success. And so now I'm kind of rethinking through all of it. I still volunteer as the church, and I call myself a hypocritical megachurch attender because I attend this giant church and I volunteer with small group boys. And, I just think through, okay, is this the right way? Is this how we find community? And, does one person need this much power at a church? All of those kind of questions. And so comedy, some of these other things, I think are other areas where I'm trying to build community and, influence people. And so, so I love those.
That's awesome.
I mean, what I love about hearing this part of you that's like jumping into all these areas, I think that could be really healthy as a 4, because I have experience of like, you want that special factor that sets you apart, right? That's like your thing. And the fear of not having it, I think, can get you tunnel vision if you're not self-aware, 100%. Right? Okay. So pushing yourself to kind of expand what that special part of you means, or even say, I'm going to go somewhere where I don't know if I ever would have gone here, but I'm going to go try it. And I'm going to let it be fun, and I'm not going to let it define everything about who I am. I mean, I love hearing that as an exercise for 4s. I'm going to steal it in some of my coaching, because I have just experienced a lot of 4s of like, well, this is my thing, and I'm going to double down. I'm going to triple down. I'm going to quadruple down. And it kind of ends up then making you more flat, and maybe reinforces some of the fears that you're not as unique as you want to be, because you've doubled down on that thing that you think is it, right? So that's a really cool example. I just love hearing it from you.
Yeah. And it's difficult. Someone messaged me, they're like, "You're so brave." And I was like, tell that to my knees when I was walking in, like
that's one more step. Keep going, please.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going home. I text my wife like 4 times. I'm like, I don't think so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So and maybe I'm a unique 4, I don't know. But some of the ups and downs are ridiculous. We hosted this conference last year, and John, you had really kind words to say about it. We didn't hit the numerical numbers we wanted. Yeah. And, people reminded me afterwards, yeah, but you're a brand new company. You hosted something, you did your own, you had your own content, you pulled it together. And in my head, I still have that performance mentality from how come we only baptized 100 people?
Yeah.
Why wasn't 105, And so figuring out those things, boy, my fourness I can tank, and depression runs in my family. And so, I've had seasons where it's, super low, but that moodiness, that fours have sometimes, the temperamentalness, reels have been either the most helpful thing for me or the worst thing for me, because I could get stuck in this, looking at reels of like, dad's or mom or dad's coming home from the military, or people putting their dogs down, or people attempting something on American Idol. And I'm just weeping. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired. And then the next minute I'm watching reels and I'm like, oh, I'll never get there. I'll never have that many,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is so much of this at times.
Yeah. And I think, it was interesting because, well, you also have a friend who's an Enneagram coach. And so we were talking Enneagram some at the conference also. And to find out that you were a 4 was surprising I would not have said you were a 4 because of my experience with 4s. And again, like I feel like you have, with Speak with People, it feels very put together. Like walking into your first conference, right? It was not like, oh, it's your first conference. Oh, and you're also 8 months old at that point or something ridiculous. Like, yeah. I mean, it was crazy. But even after some of the sessions and stuff, sitting around with you in the evening and talking, you could tell that there was, there were still a lot of question marks in your mind about where was this going and how was it going, and were you accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish, specifically with the conference at that point. But, I would say, kudos to you for not just bailing out, because I feel like where you are now and the amount of growth I've seen from you guys is pretty incredible. Yeah. And I think part of it was getting to that point, and maybe it's some of the experience I'm having now too, of being in business for a few years and understanding that there's cycles, understanding that there's ups and downs, and there's going to come points where you say, oh man, this might be the moment where I say, I think I have to pack it up. But then taking a beat and saying, well, is it really, or is that just how I feel right now? Like, is that just a right. feeling, or is that backed up by anything? And, I think, for you guys to say, no, like that's a feeling, that's how I feel. But like, look at what people are telling me, look at what the feedback is that we're getting. Look at, we've booked a bank, whatever it may be that kind of reinforces we are doing something here that's successful, and it's success based on a different metric maybe than what we've done in the past. So I wanted to follow up with just kind of a final question that we try to ask everybody, which is, we're all about building business with soul, like not letting ourselves be run over or run over other people as we work to build the thing that we're passionate about. And so you've talked about it some and you've hit on it a lot, but just what kind of grounds you in that? What kind of, as you're moving forward with the Speak with People, and as you're viewing the future of Speak with People, what grounds you in the soul care part, or in even not even just of yourself, but also of your team as you're moving forward? How are you looking to keep yourself grounded when it comes to your soul care?
Ooh, wow. That's a good one. Okay. Yeah. I was actually thinking about this morning, what makes, there are a lot of communication training companies. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot out there. Just like any industry, right? If I would have just been Jason Raitz, the speaker, there are a million speakers out there, so what sets us apart? And I think about that a lot. And I think about how what makes us different at Speak with People is that we do care about the soul part of it, is because if your internal world is not healthy, what comes out of your mouth, and we know that when you communicate, only 7% of your communication is words. And so words is just such a small part of it, your tone, your body language, and then 3 things always have to happen whenever you're communicating. there's a message that you actually say. There's actually a message that you really mean, but a lot of times those don't match up. Mm-hmm. And then there's what the receiver hears. So all these things are happening. And so you're not going to be a healthy, effective communicator. And to back up for a second, that's why I say it's not enough to be an effective communicator, because I know a lot of effective communicators.
Yeah.
There are a lot of politicians that are effective communicators that yell at people and make fun of people. And, there are a lot of bosses that I've had that were effective communication, but they communicated through fear and force. Mm-hmm. That's one way to communicate, and you could be effective. But I think what makes Speak With People different is we do care about that soul part. And that's why we created this thing called The Pathway. It's a step-by-step guide that walks you through how to become a more confident, captivating communicator. And the first 4 steps is all internal world stuff. It's all making sure you're healthy. And when we talk about health, so often we just talk about your physical health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you working out? And that's so important. I've struggled with my physical health. I've got a back that's had a deteriorated disc, and I've gone up and down in the stress and put on weight because of the pain. And then you're at another phase, so the physical health is so important, but we need to put the other areas as important: your emotional health, your mental health, your relational health, your financial health, your spiritual health. All of those areas together make up your soul. And so, we need to make sure that we do that. So I think Speak With People is a little different because, we're teaching that internal side. When people do coaching with me, they're expecting right away to jump into the how to use your hands when you communicate, how to use your voice inflection. And I start right in your health, and, I used a great question from Dr. Henry Cloud. Have you ever asked people, what's it like on the other side of me? And they're like, what does this have to do with communicating? I'm like, trust me, your communication, if it's unhealthy, all you're doing is putting up a wall. Yeah. Whether you're just one-on-one, on a team, on a stage, on a screen, if you're continuing unhealthy communication, you're just putting up a wall, and your message is not going to get through, then you're going to be more forceful. And so for me personally, the soul care side of it, I've had to learn so much over the last couple of years, when it comes to, helping our team, which I'm still trying to figure out. For years, I prided myself on, we always had incredible team culture, figuring things out. Our team is Chicago, Tampa. I've got other people that, help from here and there, and trying to figure out how to rally everybody and, everybody having a voice and moving these things forward, especially for me, has been a struggle because in ministry, it's so different because Sundays were coming, people were giving money, that way. Yeah. Speak With People, it's like, hey, we've got to book so many things, we've got to sell so many products, and it's like, how are we not getting all this in place? Yeah. So, for me, having that difference of, caring first for the soul, making sure you're staying healthy, making sure you're living out those daily disciplines. That's even in our Speak Like a Leader course. The first week is all about those daily habits that are going to give you success as a communicator. Yeah. So I went around and round and round and round there for you, but, kind of got to the heart there of how important soul care is for us.
No, that's good.
I mean, I'm super jazzed. I love that a company out there exists like you, and that you're opening people's eyes to that, because I do think just the culture we live in America is very like, okay, what's the hack, right? Like that's, you watch reels, so hack. There's hacking everything, and there's just no hacking this. And the thing is, people can tell.
So good.
People can tell when a speaker comes out and is holistically healthy. And honestly, you can tell me if you think this is wrong, but I have a theory that if you're coming out there whole and healthy, even if you fumble through your speech a little bit, you're still going to captivate, and people are going to catch on to that energy and health that you're bringing. And then you have so much more room to improve the actual craft of speaking if you have the foundation of wholeness. Because, man, I've been to talks like you're talking about where I walk out anxious because the speaker was fear-driven or angry or using guilt or using shame or filled so much with their own shame that is bubbling out, and then I walk out feeling like, well, I'm convicted, but really I am swimming in all of these things that, in my opinion, are not from God. in my opinion, are not healthy, and in my opinion, don't bring wholeness. And so I love that you're teaching people, across the board in all areas, like having this foundation first becomes just this most effective part of your communication skill. I mean, that's awesome. Everyone hire Jason.
I love it. And I 100% agree with you. I 100%, I can sniff it out so quick. Our whole company is built on this with or at paradigm. Do you speak with people, you speak at people. And really, I thought I came up with it about 15 years ago. I didn't. The great Vin Scully, LA Dodger broadcaster, came up with it in the 60s. But it's, for me, it's this concept of with is when you establish a connection with your communication.
Yeah. And
at is when you force a connection. With is when you breathe life. We like to say healthy communication is oxygen for your relationships. So you breathe life into people. At, you're sucking the life out of them because you're communicating through fear, communicating through unhealth. There's a proverb in Proverbs 10:11 in the Message. It says, the mouth of the good person is a deep, life-giving well. With, the mouth of the wicked is a dark cave of abuse. At. And I see that through one-on-one conversations with or at, on a team as we're working together. There's the with or at from a stage, from with or at, from a screen. And so I 100% agree with you. And if we can get people to that place, it's just amazing. I mean, don't even talk about you'll succeed in your career if you communicate in a healthy way, because you'll build trust with people. I mean, that's one of our trainings. That's what it's all built on. Right. You will build trust with your clients and deepen your client relationships if you continually improve your communication skills. But if you don't, doors are going to close. You're going to wake up one day and realize, hey, wait a minute. Why does nobody want to be around me? Well, it's because you've been speaking at people all this time.
Yeah.
I love it. My brain is a million miles an hour. I love it.
I can't think of a better way for you to probably wrap up this podcast than that. So I'm not gonna go any further. I feel like you've given us some entrepreneurial nuggets, some Enneagram 4 nuggets, and of course some speaking and presenting and communicating nuggets, because you're the master.
Yeah, I got coached a little.
Yeah,
I really
right.
do feel like it.
So thank you very much for all of that. And
absolutely.
Let us know and let our folks know where they can find you. What's the best way to get in contact with you? Obviously, we'll put all this in the show notes, but what's the easiest way to reach out to you and speak with people?
Absolutely. Carrier pigeon is really the easiest.
Here's that stand-up comedy.
Point it towards, there it is. Speakwithpeople.com is our company website. You can find everything there, our podcast, our weekly blog. You can sign up for our weekly communication guide. And if you're interested in any of those courses, they're listed. We have a course called Speak Like a Leader. It's to help you become a more captivating public speaker. We have a course called How to Communicate, which just helps you succeed in your everyday communication. And then we have a brand new course called The Presentation Blueprint, which teaches you how to put together a presentation with maximum clarity and deliver it with confidence. So that's where you can find me.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking time out today to chat with us. And we really appreciate it. We'll be following up with you, man.
Can't wait. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a lot of fun. And we have a lot of thoughts.
So many.
So many thoughts. But those will be in our next episode. We're going to do a bit of a reaction episode for episode number 49. So that'll be coming out soon. So look forward to that.
Yeah. And while you're here, all the links, how you can connect with Jason in the show notes, as well as our socials, as well as please sign up for Work Like a Nine. It is going to close and we don't want you to miss out. I almost forget to say this out loud, but we are closing the doors for our co-working group in June, and it's going to be closed for 6 months. And so we want to be able to include you. Listen, our last time we sat down and set a timer and worked out some summer marketing plans, and everybody came back after the timer and said, I would have never done that on my own.
I was just going to say, like, that I think was a super helpful, like, just example of what, like, this group is becoming is just like a place where we can sit down for an hour once a month and do things that we wouldn't otherwise do on our own.
That would procrastinate forever. I mean, that's my case anyways. I'm just going to keep pushing it off until other people are looking me in the eyes and I'm like, we're going to do this. And then we all do it together and it feels really great. So you can sign up for that on our website. That's also in the show notes.
And don't forget to subscribe, follow, Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see all that as well. And we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.